Morning Bluegrass. Thank you all for coming out. Hi, Todd. Good to see you. Thanks for coming. We are very honored to have you here this bright and early in the morning to learn about another one of those topics that we think is very important, very timely, and very transformative, not just for downtown Lexington and the things that go on here, but what happens downtown affects the region. And so it's just a timely topic to have some discussion and to have a good, lively interaction on. This has become, the Good Morning Bluegrass series has become a very popular event and one that's helped us in many respects to really get a lot of information out across the community in many different ways. These events are only as good as the sponsors in many respects and those of you who attend and participate, but we do want to acknowledge our sponsors, and we're going to hear from our presenting sponsor here in a minute. But something we're doing a little bit different is that at your table, if you'll look at that little program, listed on that program are all of our sponsors. And here's the thing that we ask, is that you take a look at them, and when you need a different business vendor for some different part of your operation, your business, whether large or small, that you'll take a good look at those companies that invest in these events like Good Morning Bluegrass, and that you'll do business with them. So we hope you'll take a look, and if you have a chance and you see these sponsors in the room before you leave today, please thank them for their investment in the event. At this point, I'd like to have Mark Boyson, who's the market president for Fifth Third Bank, come forward. Mark, thank you very much for your sponsorship, your long-serving sponsorship of this event, and because of your name, it's given us a lot of prestige, and we appreciate that.
Great, thank you.
Thank you very much.
All right, so because of this morning's theme of Midland, Maine, and more, I thought I'd take you back to Main Street, 1993. I came to Lexington that year for a job interview, and after the interview, I walked down Main Street just to get a sense of Lexington at the time, because I was not familiar with it. Now, 1993, Bill Clinton was in his very first year in office, and Pam Miller was the new mayor as well. So, in 1993, the Wolf Wild department store, I'm at the other end of Main Street now, was empty, and today it's gray construction. Across the street, there were two buildings that have since been renovated pretty nicely. One has Portofino's in it, and the other has Natasha Cafe. And if you walk towards us and cross over MLK, the city garage was basically just poured concrete, and today it has a nice decorative panel, and it was purple the other night for Prince's passing. And then across the street, those buildings, several of them were combined into the Downtown Arts Center, and there's some sculpture on the top of that building. You might remember, some of you might remember Embry's store. That building's gone, and that whole area is now the downtown courthouses at the corner of Limestone and Main Street. So if you cross over Limestone, does anybody remember the hat shop that was right? Okay. So. The hat shop was in the wrong decade. I mean, this is 1993, and I think it was probably from the 1950s. But anyway, so Center Point Development is coming up on that side of Main Street. And then on the other side, you've got those buildings, like Trust has done a nice job with that building, and probably 21C is on the corner there with the First National building, and a couple of other buildings have been turned into into 21C. If you cross over Upper, the old courthouse at that time was the courthouse. It was still in operation. And the Fifth Third Pavilion today sits next to it. At that time, it was Cheapside that connected Short and Main Street. That's now Cheapside Park. And of course, the Fifth Third Pavilion, that's Farmers Market and Thursday Night Live and those kind of things. Festival Market was there. Jim Sawyer later that year started his business that's been in continuous operation since that time. You might remember that it used to be Barney and Charlie's at that location. And then across Broadway to finish the tour, you have Victorian Square at that time. Of course, today it's called the Square. It's been nicely renovated, and Urban Outfitters replaced a Shays, and you've got some other restaurants, Tony's and Saul Good. Across Main Street, both Triangle Park and the Convention Center were renovated since 1993, and of course I know this morning we're going to hear a little bit more about maybe another renovation on the Convention Center. So that's just a little walk through Main Street in 1993, and this morning I guess we'll hear about how it might be going forward. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Mark. So some of that I can remember when I first came here. That's been 15 years ago, but some of those I've just seen the pictures, so that was kind of an interesting good way to set up today's program. Good. Very good. So we have a new moderator today. Now, he's not new to all of us. He's someone that he's a fixture in the community. The thing I like about David O'Neill is that he's just one of those people who just comes and says, can I help you do this? Can I help you there? Can I help you there? And then he never asked to do something like this, and we thought, gosh, this would be a perfect little fit for David. So David O'Neill runs our PVA. He's done a phenomenal job there, and this is like second nature to you. You do a lot of moderation with a lot of different things, and so we appreciate that. So I'm going to have David O'Neill come on up and start with our panel introductions and kick our program into high gear. Thank you, David.
Well, good morning. Thank you, Bob, for the nice introduction and the privilege to moderate such a panel. Pardon me if I get a little bit hoarse. It's hard to scream along with Eddie Vedder and Pearl Jam for a fellow my age. Who else was at Pearl Jam last night? Did any of you go? No, it was a great show. It went about 3.5 hours, so I skipped out on Yellow Ledbetter to get some sleep and beat traffic home. So I think we're set up to have a really great discussion today, so why don't we get right to it with the introduction of our panel. Starting with, you all want to come on up or come up as I introduce you. First up is Phil Hollebeck, founder, president, and CEO of Lexington's real estate company. Phil and LRC are actively involved in the transformation of downtown Lexington. Phil has an MBA from University of Oregon. He moved to Lexington in 2000 and has been involved in a variety of civic organizations, including the founding of LIPA, Lexington Young Professionals Association. He has served on numerous boards, including Lexington Center, Urban League, Bluegrass Community Foundation, Downtown Lexington Corporation, and Big Brothers Big Sisters. Welcome, Phil, and why don't you get us started with a 2 or 3 minute elevator pitch on any topic you want.
Right on. I'll never pass up that opportunity. So I moved here in 2000 from San Diego. San Diego is such a big city. It's really hard for one person to make a difference. And one of the things that's just so great about Lexington and so attractive to young professionals is that one person can make a difference in a town this size. You really do feel like you're moving the needle. And so every day I wake up and just feel so honored to have that opportunity. In the past, we've developed a couple of projects downtown, Main and Rose and Nunn Building Lofts, brought about 120 new residential units to downtown Lexington with a bunch of retail. The 2 new projects we're working on right now, one is a redevelopment of all of Midland Avenue, and the other is Main and Vine, which is a smaller version of our Main and Rose project. Main and Vine has about 15,000 square feet of retail, plus 50 apartments on top of that. Midland Avenue is going to blow you guys away when you see what it looks like. And it's thanks to a nonprofit, Community Ventures Corporation. They're headquartered here in Lexington, a statewide organization. They believe in improving our communities via increased jobs and increased business ownership. About $50 million worth of investment, 4- and 5-story mixed-use buildings, first floor retail, apartments above. The retail is really exciting. One of the concepts is called Redemption Pizza. There's a couple here in town who pastors to prostitutes, drug abusers, and so on in the East End and North Side. They care so much about these people. These people will be the servers in this new Redemption Pizza concept. We've got a rooftop greenhouse that'll provide jobs to people in the East End. The rooftop greenhouse will grow lettuce and other produce that's sold to the restaurants right in the project, teach people about healthy eating and so on. That's very, very important for a neighborhood who has the lowest percentage of car ownership in all of Lexington, and whereas most of us might pay $4 or whatever is for a gallon of milk, people in the East End might have to pay $7. So to provide more food opportunities to that neighborhood is critical. but it's going to be so cool. You guys are going to be blown away when you see Midland Avenue, and we'll talk more about that later.
Thanks, Phil. Contestant number 2, Bill Owen, is president and CEO of Lexington Convention Center. He's a native of Gainesville, Georgia, but grew up in Lexington, educated here in public schools, and is a UK graduate. Bill began his business career leasing shopping centers for a Lexington-based developer and went on to a 40-year career in commercial real estate development and asset management, mostly in downtown. Bill joined Lexington Center Corp. in 1991 as Chief Administrative and Financial Officer and was promoted to his current position in January 2000. Bill has served on numerous boards, including Downtown Lexington Corp., Downtown Development Authority, Convention and Visitors Bureau, YMCA, Baptist Seminary of Kentucky, Kentucky Baptist Foundation, and others. Bill and his wife, Debbie, have 3 adult children. Bill, congratulations on what appears to have been a successful effort in Frankfort to move forward with some much-needed changes at the Convention Center. Would you like to give us a recap?
While the hurdle in Frankfort was a very tall hurdle, it was the first, and we have some more hurdles ahead of us. We were successful in Frankfort in achieving approval to enable the local council to increase the transient room tax by 2.5%. That would take us equal to Louisville, and that will give us an income stream to allow us to support the debt service for a new convention center, primarily exhibit hall. We also were successful in getting a $60 million commitment from Frankfort, which is contingent upon finding the rest of the project financing, which includes $10 million from Urban County government and $171 million of private place financing. Give you an idea of what we'll do with all of that money. Rupp Arena, Lexington Center opened in 1976, and it was built with size of the arena in mind. The exhibit hall in those days was only 36,000 square feet, and it didn't take very long to understand from a marketability standpoint that it was undersized. A 1986 study, 30 years ago, revealed that Heritage Hall should be, in order to be competitive with and to place Lexington as a convention destination competitive with our primary competitive group, 100,000 square feet. That study led to building West Hall on the Van Daren Hardware site in 1995, and it took it to 66,000 square feet. Another study in 1998 that led to us doing Bluegrass Ballroom and some other meeting room conversions said Heritage Hall ought to be 100,000 square feet. A third study, Convention Sports and Leisure in 2011 for a Visit Lex, said, guess what, Heritage Hall ought to be 100,000 square feet. So finally we seem to be in a position where we can replace Heritage Hall because you can't expand it in its current location. It's bound in by Rupp, Mary Todd, Main Street and Vine Street. Mary's not moving. You have to replace it. We will replace it and attach it to Rupp on the concourse level, 100,000 square feet west of the arena, and then come back along Main Street and do additional ballroom and meeting room spaces where the existing Heritage Hall is. We're positioned to move forward, but again, we've got a lot of work to do. I'd be remiss if I didn't express appreciation to Commerce Lexington, Bluegrass Hospitality Association, Lexington Fayette Urban County Government Council, DDA, DLC, and all the groups that lined up in support and commend people like Andy Johnson and Mary Quinn Raymer and Bob Quick and others who were successful and supportive in leading that legislative effort.
Thank you. Next up, Aaron Swain joined 21C in 2009 and has played a key role in the company's rapid growth. As Director of Corporate Relations, her area touches development and corporate strategy, identifying and evaluating expansion opportunities, and community and investor relations. 21C has grown from a single property in Louisville to a multi-venue museum and 5-hotel portfolio. Aaron focuses on local partnerships, project feasibility, financing, and community impact. Aaron has a BA from Washington University in St. Louis and an MBA from Vanderbilt. Welcome, Aaron, and congratulations on what by all accounts seems to be a very successful launch of your newest hotel. You want to give us your perspective?
Yeah, good morning. So hopefully most of you are familiar with 21C and have had a chance to check it out. 21C was envisioned as a space where people could engage freely with contemporary art and enjoy wonderful food and real Southern hospitality all under one roof. When it first launched in Louisville 10 years ago, nobody imagined that there would be more than one 21C, but we've had some great opportunities to expand on our founder's mission, and each time in a way that was unique to its own context. So here, the First National Bank building was Lexington's first skyscraper. It was designed by renowned architects, and it is this amazing historic gym that is right in the heart of downtown and unfortunately sat vacant for quite some time. So we felt like 21C would be a great way to activate that site and allow that building to evolve. And the project was definitely not without its challenges, but we are so excited to be here in Lexington, have been welcomed with open arms, really humbled by our reception. The project is doing really, really well. We've gotten amazing feedback from the community and all of our guests and visitors. So we're just thrilled to be in Lexington and so glad to be part of the conversation this morning.
Thank you. And completing our panel is Dudley Webb, chairman of the board and co-founder of the Webb Companies. Dudley was born in the coal mining community of Hot Spot in Letcher County. In 1969, Dudley and his brother Donald established what is now the law firm Webb, Hoskins, Brown & Thompson, where he remains a senior partner. In 1972, Dudley and Donald formed the Webb Companies, a real estate development firm managing construction, marketing, leasing, brokerage, and property management. Dudley has served on a variety of boards, including PNC Bank, Triangle Foundation, Bluegrass Community Foundation, Commerce Lexington, Downtown Lexington Corp., and many other organizations. Dudley is a graduate of Georgetown College and UK Law School. Good morning, Dudley. It looks like you guys have gotten the new Proof Fitness open in a great new space, new businesses in Victorian Square, and you're pouring concrete in Center Point. You guys are busy. Got an update?
Busy. Yeah, it's great to see this group out this morning. And the interest this community has in its downtown. I spoke earlier with the Channel 27 reporter, and she was asking, why is downtown so important to this community or any other? And I told her that it's reflective of the heart and soul of the community. In fact, I pointed out that all the TV stations here on their news, they use as the backdrop the downtown skyline. And it's reflective of the heart and soul of the community, and it's so important. But Mark, I'm reminiscing back to 1993 when you walked down Main Street. When I came here in 1973 and we opened the Webb Companies, we wouldn't have seen you on Main Street. You wouldn't have seen anybody. You fire a gun down Main Street, you wouldn't hit anybody. And it's amazing how it's evolved. I remember having come here as a child to visit, and Main Street was so alive. It was thriving, it was bustling, it was retail, and things changed. And they changed again in the 70s, they changed again in the 80s, and Bill, you were around with us back in the old days there, and you saw this evolution take place. And I think back, you talked about RUP and the vision for RUP. Again, these were private individuals that got together and decided to make something happen down there. I remember seeing Channel 27 at the time, Garvis Kincaid on there saying that what was going to happen, we're going to build RUP, and it's going to be what he called a jewel in a pigsty. That was the old saying back then. Many of you remember that. So we followed this progression, and I think he was exactly right at that point in time because we had to do something. And again, largely through the efforts of the private sector, we were able to reinvent our downtown, and you see what we have today. And a part of that evolution came in 2007, I guess. We were on the chamber trip, and the Bureau at that point in time asked, would you guys consider doing another hotel, knowing that we'd done the Hilton here, and as a result, we got the 1985 Final Four. And that was a large finesse move. The same evolutionary process you went through with 21C, we did also. In fact, those of you who don't remember, Mr. Kincaid had a vision for these three blocks, where the Kentucky Central is, where this project is, and for where the Festival Market is. And largely through our efforts, we helped them assemble these three properties, and which was no easy task. But once we got that done, then the question was what would go there. And so consequently, this opportunity came first. But the Final Four search committee came in 1981 and looked at Lexington, and they said, not enough hotel rooms. 1982, or 81, I guess, late 81, they came back again and started looking for the 1985 Final Four, and they said, what about the hotel rooms? Well, Don and I, as a finesse move, put up a sign out there and said, coming soon, 365-room hotel. And we rented a bulldozer and had them out there pushing around the dirt. And as a result, they not only committed, but at that point in time, we got Radisson and Metropolitan Life Insurance Company to come in and invest in this project with us. So as a result, this thing has been here still. It's a great project. And I just look back through the history of downtown, that again, the private leadership that made these things happen. And the 5 investors, for example, who put up $22 million in private money to do Victorian Square. And also the rest that, for example, Kentucky Central and that committee over there decided to invest in retail in downtown with the Festival Market. That was an entirely experimental type project done at a point in time when cities across the country were trying to reinvent their retail in the downtown, and as a result, they looked at 2 projects in Baltimore and New York that were very successful, one in Boston, Panel Hall, those of you know it, and they thought it would bring back 80,000 of retail to try to do something here. Well, that experiment failed prematurely because basically Kentucky Central had issues with the state and the insurance department. But as a result of that, at least, we had a lot of momentum that came. And so in 2007, when this opportunity came up, Woodford and I talked about it, and we said, well, maybe we could do one more. We'll try to put that block together where the Rosenberg property was. Again, not to pick a fight with anybody, we were obviously big historic preservationists as well. We worked closely with the Bluegrass Trust through the years and the historic interests and so forth. But for whatever reason, that one became a hotbed. It started with the fact that a lot of the college bars over there, most of them month-to-month rents and leases, none or very few of them paying rent, 35 full-time jobs in the block. The buildings, we hired a consultant to come in and look at what was there to see what we could use. They spent about $400,000 for a consultant from Atlanta, a specialist in historic retail, to come in and look to see what could be done. They came back with their final study, and it showed basically it was going to cost about $150 a foot to renovate those buildings, which literally meant that each of those buildings would have to rent for about $40 a foot. Doesn't happen in downtown, never has happened. Typical rent in the downtown today might be half of what we get in the Financial Center at Kincaid or the World Trade Center. But in any event, we tried to look at that option. It didn't work. Interestingly enough, I look back at the history of the block, and a lot of people complained about what happened there. But there were numerous attempts to try to reinvent that block, one of which was the Woolworth Building, which in 1993, there was a large community effort, and I think the mayor at that point in time was involved in it with the Rosenberg family, to try to do an incubator space in that building. It didn't work. They spent over $200,000 pursuing it. When it didn't work, they took down the building. So that was the first of the parking lots that came in the block. But this was an example of the history. But again, in 2007, we had the stars aligned, we thought. We had a hotel that was ready to go, major investors that were ready to go, and we started. We announced it. And then a lawsuit came, then we had various meetings, and the answers that came back to us were save all 17 buildings in the block. Those of you who lived here at the time knew the condition of Rite Aid, ready to fall down. Most of the buildings in the block were ready to fall down, not because of willful neglect, because they were old. As to the historic nature of the block, again, we look back at the history of the block. 1983, the historic preservation people came in, looked at putting it on the register. They decided none of the buildings that were worthy of doing that because they had been modified. So that was the history of where we are. Where we are today, though, is we decided to move forward. We've been through a long battle to get to where we are. The good news is we're moving forward today. They're under construction. And the good news in the interim, we've renovated Victorian Square twice now. Another $17 million went in there last 2 years ago, and it's doing great. The point is, in my mind, Lexington will take care of itself. It's just, we've just got to let private enterprise do its thing, and the Chamber represents that private enterprise. And this may be my last involvement, at least in a major project like this, but these things are critical. They create jobs, 1,200 new jobs in this community, new tax base that'll build a new school in that block alone. But we just got to go ahead and make intelligent decisions, and these also involve intelligent compromise by the people in leadership positions as well as the private sector. But again, the good news is the interest is fantastic. The lenders have always been there. The tenants have always been there. We had the office building 5 years ago, they were totally committed. 3 years ago, we were totally committed. 2 years ago, we were totally committed. Marriott's still standing by. We had 2 major tenants, 90% of the building leased. And that went away with one fatal swoop. And that was because of the fact we went up and applied for at that point in time, we applied for the TIF application, what the city had committed in 2007 to do for us, to issue the bonds. And they refused. And for whatever reason, I never understood why. It shouldn't have happened. A lot of arguments as to why it didn't happen, but it didn't. And as a result, we went on hold. So we hunkered down. We tried to be civil about it, despite the naysayers and the negatives and those who called us everything but, I don't know, whatever in the newspaper. But again, it involves intelligent compromise. Lexington, again, is a great community. The representation in this room is fantastic of the businesses that make it so. Great quality of life. It's a great place to live. We want to keep it that way. This chamber puts on a trip every year to go to these various cities. And this chamber tries to bring back ideas that will better the community, make things better than they are. And many of those ideas we've incorporated through the years. This project that we're trying to do now is one of those that reflects the best of the ideas that other people are doing. Phil and Bill and their projects are going to be great, but it involves interplay, interreaction, and smart decisions. So hopefully we got it right this time.
Thank you, Dudley. So we'll go through a few questions and allow each panelist to weigh in and provide some answers, and then at the end we'll take some questions from the audience. So clearly downtown Lexington has seen some significant and positive change recently. We seem to be riding some momentum, and in my opinion, few things have as dramatically changed the atmosphere and flavor of downtown as Fifth Third Pavilion. And in retrospect, it seems like a no-brainer. So what do you all see as some big downtown-centric trends that we can expect in the short term, and how can our business, civic, and civil leaders be prepared? Phil, you want to start?
You know, I think Fifth Third Pavilion is a great example of the public sector, private sector working together, not just in terms of financing for that space, but also the interplay of the physical spaces where you hang out. The Chamber of Commerce Lexington took us to Greenville, South Carolina, not that many years ago. And that Main Street won a Main Street USA award, the best Main Street transformation in the country. And what was so great about it, that used to be a street that had racing one-way traffic. Now it's got slow traffic, head-in parking, sidewalk cafes, and guess what? Every retail storefront is full, and they're attracting knowledge-based young professionals. From an economic development standpoint, cities used to go after manufacturing companies. As we moved past that, cities said, well, you know, we're going to go after knowledge-based companies, but when you have 500 cities going after Google or whatever it might be, cities started to realize we're going to go to the next step and we're going to recruit knowledge-based young professionals. What was always the missing link in economic development was, in order to recruit those knowledge-based young professionals, we've got to have in place the amenities that they want. And we get that as a city now with things like Town Branch Commons, which will go up Midland Avenue, with things like the Emerge Conference that Commerce Lexington put on last week. We are recruiting those knowledge-based young professionals, and it's not just because of the housing we're providing or the great hotels or the great restaurants. All of that's part of it, but the city and the chamber are working together. And so when you have all of that together, I think that's what really helps move us forward.
Thanks. Bill?
I guess what comes to my mind as it relates to the convention center project, private investment always follows public investment to some level. When we completed the last renovation to the convention center, we saw the Hyatt, which was really declining in poor shape with an owner that really didn't care about it. It actually in those days was owned by Wyndham Hotels, and because they couldn't change it from a Hyatt to a Wyndham, they went through a protracted period of time trying to sell it. They eventually did sell it. It changed from a Hyatt managed property to a Hyatt franchise property, and that opened the door for about a $12 million renovation. The Radisson changed its flag to Hilton, underwent a similar size renovation. Now you have some new ownership groups. The Hyatt just this year went through another multi-million-dollar renovation. you've got some stabilization of those two primary properties. And once we launch and get underway with a new convention center improvement, we're going to see some private investment follow that. It will happen. So that's one of the key themes that we'll see moving forward, in my view.
Thank you, Aaron.
I think we have in Lexington a lot of really great complementary projects forthcoming. Certainly the renovations of the convention center are going to be so great for being able to attract diverse and high quality conventions. We are certainly really excited about that at 21C. And then the Town Branch Commons project, I think, will also help foster fantastic connectivity downtown and really encourage people to consider going new places and trying new ways of getting there, and help create a perception of safety and accessibility and mobility downtown. And I think all of that is important to the way people think about Lexington, and especially people who are considering visiting or moving here. And so I think that a lot of these projects are already forward thinking to address some of the things that are important to the city and will provide the infrastructure needed to support the growth and really align with the momentum that we're seeing already.
Thank you, Dudley.
The thing I noticed most, I guess, is the fact that we made a decision here 20-some years ago, I think, to go ahead and go up rather than out. And I think that's the right decision. We don't want to invade the Greenbelt. But then we make that decision, then we impose barriers to ourselves that preclude us from doing it. I remember, Alan, back when we proposed to do the baseball stadium down west of the arena, and the then mayor called us lightning rods. And that's why you went to North Broadway. But in any event, we just got to think through this. The good news today is that I think we got great leadership in the community. We got great private sector leadership. What we don't have is the W.T. Young anymore, or the people who write the big checks, but we do have people that are capable. The greatest thing I've found in all this exercise has been that the absentee wealth that's also here, the part-time folks who visit here who really consider Lexington not a second home, but a first home, and that's the horse farm folks. And many of those are all active investors. The people who came out of the woodwork in the course of trying to refinance and do the equity for a $200 million project is phenomenal. The interest that they have is phenomenal. In the past couple of weeks, since we announced that we're going forward, the interest has been tremendous. We had a call yesterday from a group out of Dallas, one of the largest development companies in the country. And it said, our boss has a horse farm there, and would like to know if our company could be involved in some fashion. I said, well, stand by. You know, this thing's evolving. We'll figure that out. But there certainly could be room for a major investor in the project. But I look around the room, and Jim Frazier, you know, you're head of the parking authority. The parking authority has got to be a major player in the future of downtown Lexington. Right now, we're building a 700-car garage underneath our project, which will basically sustain the needs of the project itself. But what are we going to do about these visitors who come and so forth? And we've got to have them in not only conspicuous, safe, secure parking available, but we've also got to make better use of what we have. And if we have a 80-year-old lady that comes down with her friends to have lunch at Dudley's and she gets her car towed or a $40 ticket, I don't think that sends a good message. So that means literally we've got to think through what we're doing here. And I also look at the need for, in the vicinity of the Victorian Square project. You know, we've talked about, we're underparked. We've got to solve this problem. And Bill, you're going to have the same issues as you grow over there. And that's going to be true in the Distillery District. But all up and down Main Street, we have these issues. But that literally means we got to make good use of the properties that are available. And that gets us back to infill and basically utilizing what we have. And again, we've got to solve the problems around the Fifth Third Pavilion, the Short Street merchants and so forth, as well as those on East Main Street. They have the same issues. And I think you all are getting ready to do a parking garage up on East Main Street, and it should be done. Let me tell you, the Webb Companies are the greatest fans of all that's going on in the community, from the Town Branch Commons project to the RUP expansion to 21C. There's no hostility there. I mean, it's great news for us. David, you got to love it, because it's the tax base is growing tremendously. But you think back on, you're we added $1 billion, I think, last year to the tax base. We had $200 million in one project. And again, these are jobs, and it's tax base, and it's good news for the community. Bill, you talked about, as a result of your announcement last week, our hotel group that's coming in with us came back and the call last night and said they want to add more hotel rooms in light of the news. We've had 3 or 4 calls from people interested in the properties that we have down here for possibilities of hotel expansion. That's great news. That's what you want to hear. That's what does good things for the community. It keeps it alive, creates jobs for the young people, keeps them here. And the great news is the grassroots efforts are going on in this community right now. The new commerce that's being created with the restaurants and the bars and the distillery district's announcement that's coming up soon for another expansion down there. These are all things that make this downtown more viable and Lexington a great place to live.
Just one comment on that, if I could. The Convention Sports and Leisure, which was the last consultant that did the study for Visit Lex in 2011, refreshed that report last fall as we went into the legislature, and they evaluated economic impact from meetings and conventions at Lexington Center at $42 million annually. Their recommendation was if we do the project, we're going to see that grow to $57 million annually. That doesn't include anything at Rupp. That's just meetings, conventions at Lexington Center. Conversely, if we did nothing, remain status quo, we would see that begin to erode down to below $29 million. So there's a $28 million spread in annual economic impact. Now, that's not jobs at Lexington Center. That's jobs and activity and impact at restaurants, clubs, hotels, retail, primarily in the downtown district.
Let's talk about risk and rewards of developing in a downtown environment specifically. What are the factors that make downtown opportunities unique, and how do you approach risk versus reward differently here? Dudley, you want to start with that one?
I'll start with that one. First of all, you better have a deep pocket if you're going to try to do it down here, because it's going to take you a while to get it done, and it shouldn't be that way. It's taken us 7 years, but think back on the evolution of our project. We announced in 2008 that we were going forward. A lot of excitement, a lot of enthusiasm, a lot of consternation from others as well, but at least it was happening. Then the giant recession hit, the great reset button took place. We were on hold basically for 5 years. So all we could do basically, we backfilled the hole, planted grass, put a horse farm fence around it, try to do a cosmetic thing with a private city park. The biggest problem that we had there was that the private sector and a lot of the suburbanites started liking the park idea and wanted to keep it as a park. But by then we had $28 million tied up in the deal, and we're sitting there trying to figure out what we're going to do with it. So again, the time comes in 2014 for us to move forward. We merely asked that the city issue the bonds, not guarantee the bonds, not make the bonds. All they had to do is issue them. And for whatever reason, it got put on hold, that we lost our tenants, and we kind of started over. Well, it's taken another 2 years to do that, but in that interim, it was kind of interesting because we had a visit from a wealthy investor from New York who has Lexington ties, and his family, and they decided they wanted to invest in this project, and they could do it all. The guy's worth, $16, $17 billion probably, and could write the check. So he comes, and we agree we'll still for 8 months until we could try to put the deal together. For whatever reason, it didn't happen. The newspaper continued to hammer us, hammered anybody that got around the project, and it was just insane. It was counterproductive. So once they made a decision that the City Hall was not going to go there. And believe me, Woodford and I were fine with City Hall there. Don't think it'd be the best use of the property. A lot of you would agree to that. Doesn't produce tax base, doesn't create net new jobs that we needed for the TIF, but it's an alternative and it would be a great site. But they wanted a third of the block for the footprint of the City Hall. Well, that was the entire Main Street facade, and I just don't think that was we're back to that monolithic building that everybody complained about before. This time, I think we got the plan right. We got 7 different component parts in it. We did mixed use, which you need, high-end residential apartments for affordable living, 2 new hotels, 370 hotel rooms now, 371. Great news for downtown. It's equivalent to another Hilton, equivalent to another Hyatt. And the market's here for it. Every study that's supported this project. So we finally get it ready to go. But again, we're back to things where that we've got to be developer friendly, not bend over backwards, not subsidize necessarily anything that happens, but you make investments in these type properties and they produce dividends. City of Nashville gave Omni Hotel $350 million to open that new convention hotel down there. City of Louisville, $150 million, I think, total of tax breaks and a $50 million parking garage. Here, we can't get a cup of coffee. But again, you fight through these things and you be prepared for it. The good news is people are still willing to invest. And I don't care if it's grassroots, if it's a Dave Sawyer who's a startup. Look at the success he's had. Look at Tony's Steakhouse. Everybody said that's nuts, that'll never work. And guess what? Jeff Ruby's is still coming. They're going into our block. He wants to be here. He calls every day. He called me 3 nights ago and he said, "You're not going to believe what I found." And I said, "What's that?" And he said, "I bought a 25-foot tall chandelier for the new restaurant." And I said, "Jeff, the ceiling height's in there 14 feet, 16 feet at most. So we'll figure that out later." Well, at least he's excited. And he stuck with us through the whole exercise. He's ready to go. And that's all good news. It says good things about this community. And it's viable. So it's a great opportunity. But we've just got to make it easier for people who do want to invest and they can do so. And again, we brought Jeff Anderson in over here as our partner in the Victorian Square project. What a great addition. These guys have national contacts. We've had 2 other contacts of partners like Jeff that would have an interest in being involved down here. And it's just trying to make it work. I mean, the great thing that's happening is look up on High Street. We're getting ready to do that new theater complex. We proposed that for across the street. We couldn't get that zone, but Mr. Corkin is a go on that. And that's just great news for this community. These are all things that are going to make it better for your kids and the future Lexingtonians who want to stay here. So we're a unique city. We've got great quality of life. We need to take advantage of it. It sells itself. So we just got to learn to be better stewards, but also more cooperative.
Thank you, Dudley. Aaron, and specifically opportunities associated with downtown.
I will start with historic rehab projects. I think that when you have an historic building, you have to find a developer and design team that has a great imagination and is willing to take on all of the challenges and limitations inherent in adaptive reuse projects, and especially when there is limited space for staging, and to create a design program that really supports the function of the project. So this building here was probably one of our most challenging developments to date because it's a really small footprint. It was really tough to get hotel rooms into it. And then when you put that much into a project and you only are able to fit 88 revenue generating hotel rooms, it makes it really hard to finance. And to Dudley's point, we are in a small city. There is not a ton of data. It is tough to identify demand, and so it makes it really difficult to underwrite a project that is unique and challenging. And so traditional financing sources really can't get you there. You have to have public support, especially when there's an economic impact that isn't captured in your pro forma. And so we had historic tax credits, which were huge for us, and I think that's a big benefit to doing historic rehab projects, and really incentivizes developers who are willing to take on those kinds of challenges. But for us, I think that historic backdrop and the architectural character of the building really complements the contemporary art and what we do through design and the services that we provide. And so we really do see the benefit from that. And then of course the location of being right part of the vibrant activity of downtown, and having our guests be able to see everything that Lexington has to offer, to have that at your fingertips is a huge part of what we want, and being able to constantly engage with the community and have the public able to access our museum space and our restaurant.
Thank you. Bill, risk versus reward specific to downtown.
I guess what comes to my mind is, from a private sector standpoint, the risk really kind of falls on the leadership that gets behind the public sector project. The Commerce Lex Executive Committee, who in last November heard our vision and what we wanted to do and supported it unanimously. Governor Bevin, who in January included our project, the only capital project, in his budget. And this is in a county that he lost in November by 15 points. I mean, that's taking leadership and believing in the project and putting themselves out there to risk a commitment. And that's important. It's not unlike, Fifth Third Pavilion. That was a risk. But it helped lead to the organic development that occurred on, and continues to occur, on Short Street. So from a risk standpoint, all of those who lined up in support, especially Governor Bevin, the Senate leadership under Senate President Robert Stivers, the House leadership under Speaker Stumbo, that's where the risk is taken with our project moving forward. But you look back in 1976, can you imagine downtown Lexington without Rupp Arena and Lexington Center? And I grew up in Lexington. When I was a child, I would occasionally go to work with Dad. Dad was a pastor of Calvary Baptist Church when I was a child, and I would occasionally go to work with Dad, spend the day, and one of the things that I always wanted to do was go to the top floor of the First National Bank building. And the downtown, as I've seen it ebb and flow over my lifetime, we really are positioned in a good place, in my view.
Phil?
So the question was about risk reward. Dudley mentioned the suburbanites wanting the field to stay there. My 12-year-old daughter, who loves soccer, may have been one of the problem children. She said, Daddy, why don't they keep it a field so we can play soccer out there? So I had to explain risk reward to her. And now Daddy's stuck volunteering 30 hours a week to put an awesome new sportsplex out at the intersection of New Circle Road and Versailles Road, this amazing $25 million project that the Bluegrass Sports Commission is leading the charge on, but that's for a different day. Risk reward downtown, it's so much harder, you guys, to develop downtown than in the suburbs. Not just the rules and regulations, not just all the stuff under the ground that you got to make sure you don't hit. And there's a utility vault, and it's $1 million to move it. The fact that if you build 100 homes in the suburb, you might build 4 houses at a time. Well, guess what? When we built Main and Rose, we built all 100 houses at once. We didn't build them out of wood. This was a big, giant steel building. The costs are more expensive. In most cities, it's a 2-to-1 ratio on price per square foot on how much it costs to live downtown versus the suburbs. Lexington's still an awesome value. It's not that 2-to-1 ratio yet. It's less than that. In fact, in some places, it's not much more than a Chevy Chase home on a price per square foot. So risk reward is really out of whack, and that's why you don't see a lot of people developing downtown. You've got to commend people who are taking chances, not just the big projects, but Sam and Noel Dick have Cycle U first in the National Avenue area, and now on Midland. B. Nichols taking a chance on North Limestone. These projects are very, very difficult. Even for a small retail shop, they may have a risk of there's not enough parking. So the risks are huge across all levels. I commend guys like Randall Stevens, who has great shared office space downtown and is looking to expand that as well. But to make this risk-reward equation work, it's got to get in balance, and that's why you need public sector dollars to help balance it out.
David,
Let's stick with that for just a second, Dudley. Each of you are involved in a major project where the math doesn't exactly work without some aspect of public financing, creative financing, whether it be TIFs or loan guarantees or bonds. So that specifically, Dudley, why don't you go first? Do we have the incentives that we need now, and if not, what's missing?
We do, but are they predictable? That's the biggest challenge that you face in this business, is that you think you have it and then you don't. The laws in Kentucky are very complex. These people run out and ask for TIFs and TIF applications, have no idea what they're getting into. So far, we spent over $1.2 million just in the TIF application process alone. The problem is the predictability in downtown is very difficult. You run into unknown conditions, as Phil pointed out. Right now up there, you're wondering what's going on in the hole. We're doing having to do the perimeter walls. The limestone has very sharp edges. We have a liner that goes in to stop the water from getting into the garage, neating up the rebar and messing up the garage in 10 years or whatever. About $400,000 to go in there and spread gunite around those walls. That's what they're doing right now. Totally unforeseen, but necessary. We have to go through that. The problem that we have, though, is predictability. The downtown master plan for downtown Lexington calls for underground parking. We were told that in 2008. That's what we needed to do, so we tried to do that. The only way you can justify doing that is you're spending almost double or 2.5 times for this underground parking garage that we're building versus what we could have done it for with a garage like next door, where you build it above ground. So there's a very distinct cost premium that's associated with that. So we go in and make that decision, and then we go through the process of trying to get the design approvals. As you all know, we went through 14 different design iterations for this project. Can you imagine the cost of time and delays and the renderings and the plans of the architects and so forth to redo this? And each time we thought we were there, and we came back and there was a different obstacle. I mean, we went through, EOP came over and said, we think we can get this done. We know what the city wants. Well, they didn't. They were right back up there again, fighting the same battle, so we don't like this window detail. You can't do that on a $200 million project. So predictability is critical. They got to set the rules and then enforce them, respect them, and move forward. And that way they apply to the same. And I realize you have to have some flexibility. By the same token, when we got ready, each time that we thought we were ready to go, it didn't work out. And we had the TIF that was necessary. The only way you could justify the numbers making this parking garage work is to use TIF. The theory of TIF is you get to recover future taxes that the project would generate to help pay for infrastructure. You can't use TIF to build a ballroom. It's only for public infrastructure, in this case, the garage. So we go down there and build a 35-foot deep hole. We're ready to go. We go down to get a building permit, and not the city, but the lawyer for the city, or contract lawyer, came back and said, well, you can't have the building permit unless you sign this agreement that you'll restore the site in the event that you don't go. Well, little did we know when we signed that agreement that the city itself would hold us up by refusing to issue the bonds. And I'm not casting doubt. I put that behind us. I'm not casting blame in any shape, form, or fashion. I'm just telling you how frustrating it is to go through this exercise, to have this much money, take the heat that we've taken. We signed a confidentiality agreement with the Collins family that lasted for a year. We couldn't say a word. Everybody else sure did talk, including the city and the newspaper and everybody else. We didn't say anything. We just smiled and went on. And when the Collins family made a decision 4 months ago to not be involved in the project, that's when Woodford and the Rosenberg family, we agreed to go forward privately. Now, we had to change tactic because we're still paying $40 million for a parking garage that's worth 10 the minute you open it. Remember that. That's the kind of premium you pay for underground parking. We were committed to it. We've got to do it. Once we've done that, the easy part, the heavy lifting, is behind us. It's you're going to go up with the towers, and that's relatively easy. But to give credit to what Bill and Phil said, we've got to figure out ways to not grease the skids, but at least make it easier and more developer friendly, more predictability in the process so we can make things happen. Now, you got to remember this also. There are not many places for another major mixed-use complex to happen downtown. In fact, this is the last block. When you look at it, it's available. You look to the north, you look to the south, it's all historic. You look to the east, it's already developed. That's not much going to happen there. So consequently, we better make use of what we have in an intelligent compromise. So we go to Chicago and bring an architect in here that we thought was a godsend. Everybody loved her. Unfortunately, came back with a design, had 12 by 12 hotel rooms. 20% of the rooms in the hotel had no windows. When I asked the question, what do we do about the public who wants to look out their window, their answer was, we'll put drapes over them, and they'll never know the difference. I don't buy that. That's when that deal blew apart. We saw that wasn't going to work. So we go on to the next step, and we engage yet another architect. Now we've gotten Joe Rabin, the internationally acclaimed architect, hotel specialist, that's redoing the project, reinventing it. Called last night. They're going to have a new interior rendition of what we're doing. It's a reinvention of the hotel layouts. That'll be unveiled in the next couple of weeks here. It's exciting. All of the elements in this project work. 150,000 square feet of office space. It's a year's supply in this market. We were comfortable with designing Class A space. But ask the girls at the Chamber of Recruit Business. You've got to have inventory to be able to market. And for example, last week we had a call interested in 100,000 square feet from a user that's not here now. That's what we need. That's why we need inventory. Phil, that's to your credit. And I don't care if it's space in a historic building or if it's space in a new high-rise structure or whatever. We've got to be prepared to move forward. That's called progress. And we've got an opportunity here in this community that's unique. It's great quality of life, and we just got to make intelligent decisions and intelligent compromises to keep things moving.
All right, thank you. Aaron, public financing, incentives, do we have what we need?
I think we do have some great options here, but certainly we are sympathetic to Dudley's position that it can be tedious and costly to secure those sources. We are building a hotel in Nashville right now using TIF there, and they provide that support in a really streamlined and programmatic way. So we have a distinct and definite source of financing that's linked to that future refund of our property taxes, and that has been a different, it was certainly a different process. Here we do have some great incentives that we have not found elsewhere though. We have the tourism development incentive, which is a state-run program that will be really great for 21C here. And we actually, 21C was able to benefit from an expanded state historic tax credit program, which unfortunately I think was not renewed, and now that will again be another tax credit that will be a little bit less predictable and not as useful for developers who are interested in taking on the challenges of downtown historic rehab projects. But the historic tax credits and the Tourism Development Act incentive were huge for us, and so those are great resources. And then we actually layered in new markets tax credits, a Kia incentive, which is a rebate on sales tax paid on construction materials purchased in Kentucky. And we are also using a local and state property tax increment financing. So we've utilized a lot of public incentives for this project, but it was tough to string them all together in a way that amounted to a complete financing structure, and was certainly an exercise in creativity and patience.
Thank you, Bill.
Well, as a city agency, all of our financing is public. All of our debt burden is public. What I will add and share with you, convention centers generally not only require support for the capital budget for construction from a transient room tax or from other sources as we are experiencing, they also require operating subsidies annually, typically from the organization that owns them, whether that be a state, as in the case of International or the fairgrounds in Louisville or Northern Kentucky, or a city, as in Lexington Center. We're fortunate here that those subsidies are provided from event-based, attendance-based revenues out of Rupp Arena, concession stands and parking fees generally. In fact, since 2001, only 2 years, has the local government had to kick in, or have they kicked in, support to Lexington Center out of the general fund. In 2006, our debt service had a $600,000 speed bump in it because it was the last year of the original debt, and layered on, I think you were on the board in those days, Phil, layered on principal reductions on new debt we issued in 2001. And the city, through the general fund, supported that. In 2008, we received a $500,000 grant from the through the Bluegrass Community Foundation, through the Lucille Carter Little endowment, to renovate the Opera House, and we conducted a capital campaign, raised another $500,000, and the city made the match to the call campaign. So in 2008, they put in another $500,000, which was leveraged 3-to-1 or 2-to-1 with other funding. So we're fortunate in Lexington with a model of our convention center that the subsidies required that are typically paid by a local government or a state government are funded from other operational income.
I'll be quick because I know we're getting to the end of our time, and Katie's got the microphone there for questions. You know, I love this town. When I first moved here, Bill Lear took me under his wing and was a great mentor to me. Bill Owens mentored me. Dudley's been great to me. It's enough to give you an inferiority complex, though, with what some of these guys do. Dudley's just saying, once we get the garage done, we start putting the tower, that's the easy part. And I'm like, holy God, that's the hardest thing I've done in my life. Bill Lear would say, you know, I'd be on a board, he'd say, how old are you? I'm like, 37, whatever it was at the time. Bill Lear would say, oh, I chaired that board when I was 34. So I always, let's see, as far as incentives, we don't have what we need. We have some of what we need. TIF is great, but you put your money out there and you hope you get it back at some point down the road. In central Kentucky, we get the short end of the stick compared to cities on the borders of our state like Cincinnati and Louisville because it's net new dollars to our state. If you put a cheesecake factory in Louisville or Cincinnati, more of those dollars will be net new than if you put that same cheesecake factory in Lexington. We would like the city to look at things like a retail establishment fund. What if we took $2 million and $50,000 went to each of 40 new retailers to help them get their businesses started? Those types of things. Dudley mentioned that application costs were over $1 million for his TIF. I had a city council person say, hey, we're doing design excellence. Design excellence, which, by the way, would not have allowed Main and Rose to be developed, which won every architectural award you can win. They said, we're putting $40,000 in there for TIF application. I said, what? They said, yeah, each project can get up to $5,000. This is going to be great. Well, $5,000 isn't exactly an incentive on a $10 million or bigger project. So incentives aren't just financial. They're also, you know, knowledge-based, physical space-based. We'd love that mid-level managers at the city or the state understand the impact of delays on their decisions. Imagine the interest on a $50 million project if a city planning staff takes 1 extra week to make their decision, or if a traffic engineer at the state says, no, we want Midland Avenue to continue to have 50-mile-an-hour racing traffic. So incentives are more than just financial, and we're not there yet. We're going in the right direction now.
Thank you, Phil. Katie, do we want to go to the audience now?
Phil, I'll start with you.
Uh-oh.
The Greenville project for their Main Street was made possible by moving all of the state and federal highways to the perimeter of the city core, which was what we'd have to do here in town. And with the Newtown Pike extension, the last drawing I saw is circuitous route to South Lime. So I don't know how you would move state and federal highways to that side of the city to be able to open up Main Street for making it more pedestrian friendly and slower traffic. And Bill, to the expansion of the convention center, I'm all in on that, and I was going to suggest that maybe if you could find the money to build a promenade off of the second floor of the Civic Center shops to stretch across Vine Street and tie into the top of the Triangle Park so that you'd have more pedestrian friendly connection with that end of town and not have to have pedestrians fighting Vine and Broadway.
In 2000, we had that piece of Vine Street behind Triangle Park approval to close it for 52 days. And the same city council that voted, I think, 12-2 to close it, about 2 months later, voted 8-7 to open it back up. So that's some of the, maybe what Phil's talking about, where uncertainty, and we had to decide, okay, how are we going to site the building at that edge? One interesting thing there, some of the schematic work that has been developed, that was developed back in 2012, 2013 on the exhibit hall, is great. We're going to be able to reuse that. There is an opportunity, though, because the project that was put on hold in June of 2014 expanded Rupp Arena's envelope in every direction by about 30 feet, all the way to the roof line. This project does not anticipate that. So there's some additional design refinements and redesign that's going to have to happen on the Main Street side and the Hyatt side. And thank you for that input.
Great question about Greenville and city versus state-controlled roads. Some right information and some incorrect assumptions there. We're not going to have to move roads, but one of the things we really do need to do is look at control of our roads. Who controls our roads? As a community, we're held hostage by the state. The state controls Midland, it controls Main, it controls Broadway and Vine. Just to get a two-way street to cross Broadway, we've got to go to the state and beg for their approval and permission. About a decade ago, there was a road swap that was proposed. And as we changed administrations, it just got lost in the shuffle and didn't pass, but we were one signature away from getting that approved, and it was a federal highway administration signature. The deal was the city would take control of all the streets inside New Circle Road, and the state would take over Manowar. Suddenly, all the debates about two-way streets and this and that for downtown, we could make our decision as a community, and the state would have control of Manowar. That would make a big difference. And it's critical from an economic development standpoint. I guarantee you, people are moving to Greenville because that Main Street is so great. They're not moving here because you can go 50 miles an hour on Vine Street, on a street that if you close your eyes and picture walking from Triangle Park to Thoroughbred Park, there's maybe one retailer along Vine Street. So we've got this awesome downtown, but we've got more that we can do. Fixing Vine Street is one of those key critical success factors.
Let me add one thought to that, Phil. You're dead on. And those of you, particularly those in the room who work down here and so forth, probably 30 to 35% on Vine Street and Main Street of the traffic that's there really didn't want to be here. They're on their way somewhere else from Chevy Chase to the interstate or that kind of stuff. But we got to slow this traffic down. It's a matter of life safety for those who live down here. You take your life in your own hands to step off the curb here, and it just sends a bad message. And Phil's exactly right. They always go back to Frankfurt. Now, I think what's going to happen is the Newtown Pike extension is going to take part of this traffic out of here. Couldn't have been much if they tied it on through and took it to Euclid Avenue, which was originally proposed. But it'll help. But again, we've got to solve these issues. And, you know, the good news is that, again, we've got good leadership. We've got private sector involvement here. Guys like Frazier that give you time. I know you're not highly paid to listen to complaints about the parking authority, but these are the things that make things happen here, and we just got to work to make it better down here. One comment I failed to make about the pit and the gunite that's being put on the walls up there right now. David called me yesterday and asked if it was true that B Drive was doing the work up there. So they aren't, but they would have done a good job. But in any event, we just got to make better decisions here. These impact future generations. I may not be around, but a good portion of y'all will, and your kids will. And we just got to get this right. And that's why we've been as patient as we could be. We could have probably sold this property that we have for 5-6 years ago and gotten out of it. But that wasn't what we set out to do. And you got to have projects like this that make the difference. And not to reflect on Pat Madden, but I called Pat back when we started this project, and I said, Pat, why don't you get involved with this one down here with us and help us? He said, why would I come down there? Why would I expose myself to that and all this? And that's kind of the attitude that we have. It takes unique people to get this done down here, and we have them in this room. We have them with Phil, who's done a great job, a masterful job in what they're doing, and it's going to get better. But this involves intelligent compromise, and we got to involve the university more in what we're doing.
I think we've got a question lined up at table 7.
Okay.
This is for Phil. Phil, getting back to Midland, what have you heard from the city on when they're going to start this project? What's their game plan? What's going on the timeline on this, and what are they going to start first? And what have you heard from them on how this is going to go?
And so, with respect to the park or Yep. So the private sector development, the park, and the road, that planning really needs to all work together. And the groups are meeting together. I'm in meetings all the time, and it's so complex. It's unbelievably complex. The road, we already got them to reduce the lanes from 13 feet to 11 feet, which is a big deal, and put in some bike lanes. Still pretty scary. I wouldn't let my kids ride on Midland Avenue. The city has received 2 grants for Town Branch Commons, $3.4 million and $2.3 million. That $3.4 million grant is specific to Midland Avenue, for the park on Midland Avenue. So that should be the very, very first part of Town Branch Commons that gets done. The big issue is there's these giant power lines, and they cost $3 million to bury. And nobody knows who really has the right-of-way for that. And if the power lines aren't buried, you kind of slalom through them when you ride your bike, through the poles. If they are buried, the building can be close to the right-of-way, and if not, it has to be 15 feet back. So we don't have a great answer. We would like our buildings to be done by summer of 2018, so a little over 2 years. I think the power line burial could impact your parking, which we may want to, I'll help you with. But all of it will happen at pretty close to the same time. So it's one of those things where Midland could be a mess for a little bit of time, and then you guys, if you haven't come down it for a couple of months, you'll be like, oh my gosh, look what's happened. But 2018 is hopefully where you see a redone Midland Avenue.
I think we got time for one more question.
I'm Cash.
Hi, Cash.
And if Frazier would get socks, maybe he'd get things done better. Persons. And encourage them to make decisions, even if it's the wrong decision. It can always be corrected, as Dudley's been through it. And let's get a little guidance to what we want to have happen in downtown Lexington and infill.
Phil, anybody want to take?
I agree.
Okay. Complete agreement, Mr. Kaufman.
I want to commend David on his tribute to Prince with his Purple Rain tie. Prince played rough twice.
How about the panel? They did a good job, didn't they?
David, you got a new responsibility, a new role with us. Great job. Thank you very much. And I want to also thank the panel on behalf of Commerce Lexington for the blood, sweat, tears, patience, frustration, success, the euphoric things that happen when all these things come together. But I also never want to forget this. And this audience sits the people, your companies, some of those are 100 years old or older or some in between. Some of you are new, but the fact that you've been here day in, day out, you've taken risks, you've done incredible things. Lexington is the only position, Central Kentucky is the only position because of what you've done, past leaders in your companies, and those yet to be. So we want to thank you for all that. Also, I see our councilman, James Brown, thank you very much for coming. Judge Van Meter was here, and I always try to acknowledge public officials when they're in the room. And also I want to thank our staff, our members, everybody who day in, day out helped make us the top 3 Chamber of Commerce in 2014, 2015, and we've just applied Chairman Stein for 2016, and we were just named the number 8 community in America for mid-sized cities for economic development. So we got, as Dudley said many times, the panel members, we got a lot of things going for ourselves. We can't stub our toe now, and we got to figure out how we continue to go forward. So with that, I hope you will have a great day. Fifth Third, Mark Boyson, thank you so much, and your group for the presenting sponsor series, and have a great day. Thank you all for coming.